Since When Am I Faust? Chapter 1, Part 2.
You see, Alex, you and I seem to be 2 in 1. That is to say, we both come to inhabit the same body at the same time. As far as I can see, only one can be in full control at a time. But...
I stammered.
Calm down. I know this is strange, but please bear with me.
Gathering myself together, I asked.
Alright, so how did this happen?
The alicorn looked back at me with a strange smile and sighed.
Unfortunately, I feel I am to blame. You see, several hundred years ago... No, wait.
She looked down, as if she were searching for something, and then her focus shot back up to the mirror.
Several thousand years ago, I was in a situation that required me to give my life for the sake of my family. I thought that would be the end, but a traveler helped me. At the time, there was a link between our worlds, and those sent through were reconstructed, thus restoring wounds and injuries. The traveler used it, hoping it would heal me, and it did. But once I was on the other side, the gateway closed, and I was trapped.
She took a shaky breath and looked at me, or rather us, in the eyes, and said,
I'm so sorry, Alex. But for years now, I have been looking for a way to get back. When I found one, I was overjoyed, but it was very risky. There was a good chance that I would die, but I never expected my actions would pull you or anyone else into this world with me. I'm so sorry.
She trailed off, and a look of guilt covered her face. As she finished her story, I could feel the inner turmoil that she was going through, and my heart went out with her. With a somber tone, I spoke up, saying,
Honestly, I don't know whether to feel pain, anger, or sadness about her situation, but for what it's worth, it's nice to meet you.
A shallow smile returned to her, and she looked at me with a grateful expression.
And to you as well. I hope we get along. Well, we kinda have to, don't we?
I said, and Lauren gave me a lighthearted chuckle.
Yes, I suppose we do.
A genuine smile graced her face, and the weight of guilt slowly lifted off of her chest. A few moments later, her eyes began to lose focus. It felt similar to force herself to stay awake despite being severely overtired. With a shake of her head, she caught my attention and said,
I seem to be straining in control. I think soon I will have to go back into this body's subconscious. And when I'm there, could you please act as my substitute, answering my name and dealing with my relationships?
I wanted to object her plea, but part of me kinda knew that it would be for the best if I went along. Giving an internal sigh, I yielded and said,
Well, how many relationships we talking?
The mayor smiled and said,
By now, it would just be my daughters, Celestia and Luna. Please be kind to them.
My eyebrows raised for a moment, and with a firm gaze, I said,
You have my word. Thank you. On another note, I strongly suggest that you keep our situation to ourselves. It would be unfortunate to come all this way only to end up in a psych ward.
With a small grin, I said,
I'll do my best.
And the mayor gave me back control.
From now on, whenever you need me, I'll speak to you this way. It's much less strenuous, and it'll be a sure way to keep our secrets. Oh, and one last thing. Get something to eat. This body hasn't had a good meal in a very, very long time.
After that, it was silent, and I figured she'd left to our subconscious. Quickly wiping a tear from my eyes, I took a deep breath to calm my nerves. It was about noon when Celestia was making her way through the castle. She was pondering over the mysterious bang throughout the ceiling of the royal court from this morning. It had been a minor portion of her day, but somehow it seemed significant. She just couldn't put her hoof on what it was. Passing through the hall, she would glance at the workers and give them her patented celestial smile of approval. She had become quite accustomed to doing so throughout those long years without Luna, and it seemed to stick. Celestia passed by the maid's room where they were cleaning the bed sheets, the kitchen where the chef was making a gourmet 3-course meal, the dining hall where her mother was stuffing her face, Celestia froze. Swelling emotions filled her soul, joy, sadness, and most of all, shock. Tears started to roll freely as she trembled in place.
Mother?
She managed to mumble through her sniffles. Doubt clutched at her heart, but unlike the other times, other objects were in motion. Like a statue, she stayed in the center of the hallway, despite her will to run back. Her heart was beating painfully in her chest as if it wanted to run ahead of her. But still, she was overwhelmed. Slowly, she managed to unfreeze. Joy began to well up within her, so much so that she began to have trouble containing her composure, a goofy grin covering her face. She turned back to the dining hall, and when she made her way inside, she looked, and it was real. Her mom was sitting right there. looking up at her. Celestia bolted for it, quickening her pace more and more the closer she got to her target.
Mother!
I had made my way downstairs, tumbling and swearing all the way down. I was tripping all over my new hooves the entire way. But then, once I was on the main floor, I wandered the halls of this monumental castle until I found a fridge. I didn't care or know what anything was, so I ate the first thing that I saw. It turned out to be nothing other than a classic slice of apple pie. It was so good that I kept going back for seconds. On my fourth helping, I noticed a white alicorn open the doors to the dining hall room that I was in. She stared at me for a moment as tears welled up in her eyes. I looked back, shocked at how much bigger Celestia was than myself.
Mother!
She shouted, and then the next thing I knew, I was being tackled in a bone-crushing hug by none other than Sunbud herself.
Mother, I have missed you so much. Both Luna and I have been eagerly awaiting your return. Celestia, let go. Can't breathe.
I wheezed as my lungs got crushed. It took a second for Celestia to register my pleas for air, and even when she understood, she was reluctant to let go, as if she was afraid I'd disappear. When she loosened her grip, I checked myself over to make sure that she didn't actually break a bone, and thankfully nothing got damaged. Looking up, I saw Celestia staring at me with tears of joy.
Is it really you, Mom?
Her question was filled with so much emotion, and I couldn't help but feel some intense sympathy for this mare. I may have been in pain because of her, but I couldn't find it in myself to be mad at someone who seemed so happy to see me. It just wasn't right. It also pained me at the same time because I wasn't really who that joy was meant for. So, hiding in my sudden depression, I answered for my passenger.
Yes, Celestia. It's me.
I said, giving a heartfelt smile. That statement seemed to strike her to the very core. Celestia continued to stare at me, as if she wasn't mentally present, processing what I had just said. A faint smile made its way into my face, and I tapped Celestia on the nose. That seemed to bring her back to reality, and she wrinkled her nose in irritation.
Mom, forgive me, but it's hard to believe that this is reality.
To that, I only gave a smile. Then I started to look around and ask a question that could either cause more joy or a lot of pain. Biting the bullet, I asked.
So, where's Luna? Asleep, I suppose?
Tia's eyes lit up at mentioning Luna, and she quickly made her way out of the dining hall. My only guess was to wake Luna. I shook my head at her response. It was like watching a child be told that there's ice cream in the fridge. Or I guess in this case, it was more like telling Sunbutt that there was cake in the refrigerator. Once the room was empty, I asked Lauren.
Was that good? It was perfect, thank you.
I gave a small smile, and turned back to the doors where running hoofsteps could be heard.
Hey, Celestia! Wait up, I'm coming with you!
As we quickly made our way to Luna's room, I ran at full speed through the halls in an attempt to catch up with an eager alicorn. My footing was uncoordinated, and every few moments I found myself beginning to stumble. However, that wasn't the thing that bothered me. Instead, what I was struggling with was how noticeable I've become to those around me. I was being watched by every pony there. The guards, staff members, and regular citizens roaming the halls were all looking intently at me with wide eyes. From my viewpoint, shock, wonder, and even a little fear were clearly evident on their faces. Following Celestia around the corner, I was quickly reminded of my poor motor control over this new body. Because I was still new to this whole quadruped situation, I wasn't quite sure how to stop, and I accidentally ran into one of the maids. It was so sudden that I didn't even know what happened until I was tumbling on the ground. The noise from the collision caught the attention of several ponies walking through the hall, and they all turned to look at me. Celestia heard me as well, and she slowed down to see what all the commotion was about. When she spotted me in a heap on the ground, she stopped and gave me an amused smile. She held a hoof up to her muzzle, stifling a giggle. With a grunt, I groaned as I pushed myself off the ground. I rubbed my sore head and muttered,
Ugh, I didn't see that one coming.
As I spoke, another feminine voice groaned behind me, and I turned to see the maid soothing her side. My ears folded back as I realized that I had run into her, and embarrassment washed over me.
Oops.
My voice, although quiet, cut through the silence in the hall, and the maid on the ground looked up at me with fearful eyes. She looked relatively young. She had a cream-colored coat with a brown mane, and as she looked up at me, she glanced at my wings and then my horn. Her eyes widened as a realization made its way across her face, and she stood up in an instant, shouting,
I'm so sorry!
She bowed her head profusely and kept up repeating,
I'm sorry!
As for me, her apology was completely unexpected. I found myself tilting my head to the side.
Sorry for what? It was completely all my fault.
I said, lifting my arm to gesture. The maid's head twitched upwards in surprise, and I decided to take this opportunity to ask the question that had been gnawing at me since this morning.
Actually, while I have you here, do you know why pony has been staring at me? They've been looking at me funny the whole day. Every pony? Seriously? What a stupid form of wordplay. For your information, I was the one who came up with that dialect. Yeah, okay, but you forgot that there are dragons, zebras, and griffins. They're not ponies. Shut up!
Although I asked her as kind of a manner as I could, the maid still tensed up and gave me a nervous smile as I spoke. A few awkward seconds passed as she thought it over, and she looked up with an uneasy expression and answered.
Well, Your Majesty, it's because you're an alicorn, and we don't really know you.
She squeaked. I met her gaze with a sheepish expression as I scratched the back of my head.
Oh, okay. I suppose that makes sense. I'm sorry about running into you. I should have been paying more attention to where I was going. Are you alright?
She quickly stood up, readjusting her uniform, and nodded.
Yes, I'm okay, Princess. I'm sorry for getting in your way.
She squeaked out, giving a salute. Her whole body was shaking, and I felt sorry for the mare. With a sigh, I reached over and put my hoof on her shoulder. She flinched, but I continued.
Oh, please, just call me Lauren. I'm Lily Breeze,
she said with another awkward eep.
Mom, are you coming?
Celestia called from down the hall, and I glanced in her direction.
Yeah, I'll be right there,
I said, turning my head in her direction. Then I looked back at the wide-eyed maid in front of me. I patted her on the shoulder, saying,
It's nice to meet you, Lily. See you around.
And then I left her with a quick wave of my hoof. The maid and castle staff all stood there watching as the red-maned alicorn ran off. They all had their mouths bobbing open like fish as they tried to process what the princess had just said.
So, it looks like you made a friend. May as well. It's not like I have any chances of getting home anytime soon, and I'd rather be liked by everyone.
When I got closer, Celestia started running again, and I let out a quiet groan as I struggled to run at her pace and kept my footing. Even so, I managed to follow her down the hall, and towards a set of spiral stairs that led to the tower. I still can't begin to fathom how adorable this all is. It just warms your heart so freaking much, and oh my god, it's so irresistible. Anywho, let's get on to our celestial and lunar donators. Top donators: TacoCat598, Peter Coulthard, J Tinman, Darkside, Gauntlet, and Only One Thing. Zar630, Strix, Raiden, Narwhals, Black Moonheart, Drake Lovedragon, Pastel Skies, Magazine, Crazy Killer 557, Dospo, Madman Stan, Delta Omega, Jack Hedge, RuneCypher9852, Hunter Norman, Stephen Bingham, Dash of Evergreen, Rhiny Dragonwolf, Ponyman, Talrasha, The Toilet Snake, Sword Brother and Mordred, Ron and Wandering, Random Person Man Guy, Easy, Skyuchia, Leslie Prickett, Jordan Peterson, Crimson Kitsune 9, Lightskin, Monster Kitty, Needs a Life, Milan Behenek, and many more superior people. Thank you all very much for watching this video, and live life to the fullest.